Hey, cousins. I got us some new music. Good on you, cousins. You found the Gorgon Posse podcast of Medusa Rising. I'm Esme Streichelt, founder and editor of this joint. And here's the deal. Patriarchy has been on a little hiatus. Precarious, unevenly distributed, but a hiatus for about the last 70-ish years. But it's back. It's reasserting itself. Patriarchy 1.0, Patriarchy 2.0, they're teaming up to enclose women once again. Same structure, 5,000 years later. Medusa Rising would like this millennium to be patriarchy's last. To that end, drop down into the show notes to find all the things, all the fun, all the sparkles, all the rebellion. And for today, while we're making trouble, my guest is Sarah Jakle, who is the founder and executive director of DemocraSHE, with an S-H-E. Sarah previously served as the Get Out the Vote director for the California National Organization for Women and National Outreach Director for Field Team 6, leading the innovative effort to register voters using effective issue-based voter registration techniques. Empowering young women and women to hold office has been a focus since Sarah first interned at the Women's Council of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee in college. DemocraSHE is dedicated to inspiring and empowering female-identifying high school students to become future elected leaders. They encourage young women to elevate their voices through self-advocacy, civic engagement, and community building, and empowering a new generation of intersectional female activists and advocates and elected officials. DemocraSHE creates a safe, brave, joyful space where young women receive the support and guidance they need to pursue the roles they deserve. As an organization, DemocraSHE is committed to serving all women and as such strives to be actively anti-racist and intersectional. The graduates of the program see civic engagement as their responsibility and running for office as their right. On this 250th, July 4th, when this country is in the kind of trouble that it is, DemocraSHE is one of the most needed organizations I can think of. I hope you all enjoy the podcast. We had a great time having this conversation. Hey. Oh my gosh. Did I get the time wrong? I must have got the time wrong.
I thought it was 11 Pacific. Did I come at the wrong time?
No, you didn't. Clearly, I don't know how time works. That's the deal. That is totally the deal.
I'm like,
oh, well, hi. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. And I'm looking for the thing that silences my, there it is, phone. I hope I didn't make you wait long.
No, I started noodling around with other things. You know, that's fine.
Well, we're here now.
We're here now, and it's all going to be groovy. Yeah, I am also going to silence my phone because I've had 2 unanswerable questions from my parental unit today. And I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't know what to tell my mom about the question. Makes me a little sad, but we'll get to it after this. How this is going to work on the actual production is that I've sort of already recorded a little introduction of you that is just like the first paragraph of your mission statement and then like the first paragraph of your bio on your website. And there's a little kick there at the end that's just like, so Sarah Jakle, welcome to the Gorgon Posse podcast. And then we start. So we can just kind of dive in a little, you know. How are you doing today? Where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, cool. Neat. My brother lives out there. I have yet to visit.
It's a nice city.
Yeah. Is it your city since forever? Were you born there?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's very excellent. He moved out there from the Midwest. So he's a stranger still, I think, even though he's been there for a couple of years. Um, I think I lost my, hang on, question. Because I was noodling around and I got out of doing this because of my sense of time. Okay. I'll edit that weird little part out. And put this over here where I can see it and not look at myself so much. There we go. Goodbye, my face. Right on. Okay. So I wanted to start with like a really big background question that your bio begins to address, professional bio wise. So I'm really asking about this in terms of you and your kind of personal motivation for getting into this work. How did you come into this work with girls on leadership? And specifically girls in, I guess, largely underserved communities, right?
Yes.
Why that? Why what part of your being brought you into that work?
Yeah, so that's kind of a lengthier story. It starts with a young Sarah getting into direct service social work with the homeless community dealing with mental illness. I got a master's in public policy to fight for them, and I got a master's in social work to work with them with a military social work degree because I was really interested in trauma and how the brain can survive adversity and even thrive. Cut to 2014, where a very nice doctor told me that I had a terrible autoimmune disease and would never work again. So I know, indeed. So I stopped being a social worker. I lived on a couch with my dog Max, but I am stubborn and I am academic. So I thought, I can't control the pain and I can't control the fatigue, but I can learn how I want to show up in this moment. So I really studied more about trauma and the brain and the different modalities to help you thrive even through difficult situations. And I studied all of that until the election of 2016, where I said, I am getting up. I am not sitting on a couch anymore. I'm getting up. And I used all of these tools that I had been studying and learning to just get in the car, to just drive, register one voter. And I did it so many times that I became a national outreach director of a voter registration organization group called Field Team 6 and the Get Out the Vote director of the California National Organization for Women. And the reason why I started so long ago is because when I was working in that role, I saw what was happening to women. And there's big T trauma and there's little T trauma. But so much in civic and elected spaces were happening to women internally with the way we're socialized into perfectionism, into being small, into self-doubt, into imposter syndrome. When we do step up, there are very big T traumas with being dismissed, with being like bullied and harassed. Elected women candidates get 10 times more harassment than male candidates. And I realized that all of the skills that I had learned to help with sufferings from a personal standpoint, from a standpoint with my social work, could be brought over into helping women in civic and elected spaces, not just lead, but thrive. And our historically underserved girls face the most pushback. So thinking of prioritizing getting these skills to them, along with getting their voices in our democracy and understanding that running for office is our first.
Right on. So this was your own healing and then your own response to the kind of like, oh crap moment that was that election. I'm glad that you saw it for what it was right away. I think a lot of people didn't. Um, and that you had healed yourself enough by then with the work that you were doing that you could get out and make the differences that you did. That's fantastic. It's a lot to take on. Especially, coming from the couch. So big thumbs up from there. I've started over once or twice. I know it's daunting no matter where you are starting from. So, brava. Um, why mentoring, which is, I am assuming, what your program does?
So actually, our program does peer mentoring.
Oh, very cool.
Once so it's for high school girls. High school is the last time boys and girls think they can run for office equally. So we intervene in high school. And once you go through our program, you have the opportunity to come back and lead it. So our programs are high school girls being taught by other high school girls. So both civic participation skills, like how to call your representative, how to go into DemocraSHE Congress and co-sponsor bills, how to advocate for issues, how to get involved in local elections, but also the skills that I was talking about how to thrive with suffering, like meeting your inner best friend or grounding with Mother Earth or savoring the positive things happening around you. So it's one thing if I'm talking to high school girls about it, but it's entirely different to have a high school girl share what her inner best friend helps her step up and do, and how she called her representative and encourage other high school girls to do the same. So it's a peer mentorship model. And even our head workshop facilitators are longtime peer facilitators. So it's entirely high school and college rooms.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Much more relatable, right? Much safer feeling than, talking to an elder, maybe, right? It's easier to be free, to
Yeah.
be honest. This is someone who knows exactly what's happening to you right now. Like, I think that's vital these days because I remember when I was younger, people talking about the generation gap. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I listen to my parents' music. I know every kind of car they drove in high school. Like, what is this gap? But now that there's such a huge gap in terms of our like technological backgrounds and the social media backgrounds that we have, like, I was an adult when these things started to happen. And for a lot of young people, especially teenagers now, this has just always been the world. And it is a completely different, like, psychological landscape. It's a completely different relational landscape. So I think that closeness in age and that shared understanding is really essential for young people. That's amazing. It's really great that you're doing that because, I'm constantly running into stuff I can't figure out how to meet, right? But they do know, you know?
They do. And also at that developmental stage, it's a peer based stage where peers hold a unique position. So being met by a peer and encouraged by a peer and mentored by a peer has unique meaning in the teenage years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for girls, it's like, especially if they're in high school, they've already been through a few years of, patriarchy taking its first big hard whacks at their self-esteem, their self-image, their sense of courage. It's been trying to make them smaller for a little while. And like you said, sometimes in big T trauma ways and sometimes in small T trauma ways, but coming from a lot of directions at the same time. So I see that point for intervening in this really supportive way, building that kind of network under each other, like they become each other's, sort of hammock. Really, 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 really essential. Because the kinds of, like you were talking about, the kinds of threats or the kinds of harassment that female candidates or female office holders get, but that's because that's what the world is like for women who are walking around online, right? For people who are walking around in a world that is soaked in the memes and the ideas that ours is. So helping those girls I mean, I would imagine just even finding that inner best friend, finding that way to stand in your space. Give yourself a minute before you feel like you have to respond or react, right? To calibrate. Those skills function everywhere, you know?
They do. And, when I was working in politics and I would talk to women about skills like meeting their inner best friend or their inner champion, grounding and coming back into their body, they kept telling me, I wish I knew this in high school. What would my life have been like if I had been able to talk to myself like that, encourage myself like that, cheerlead myself like that, starting in high school? And I think, to your point, very much trying to shift the voice that is socialized for women. You're not good enough. You don't belong here, and being able to have a tool, an actual tool to respond to that. Democracy girls learn to ask themselves, what would my inner best friend say? Right? I,
Mm-hmm.
I hear that voice, but what would my inner best friend say? And I did think Desmond Tutu had an amazing quote, that we can't just pick up logs that are falling in the river. We have to go to where they are falling in and stop them. And I think getting to girls in high school with not just your voice belongs in our democracy, elected leadership is your birthright, but also some really tangible tools to shift the voices that they are starting to really internalize. And to your point, see in social media images that are haunting in social media, and have actual tools to name and notice these types of critical thoughts, and actual like brain hacks to shift them. These girls then meet inflection points in a very different way. Rather than counting themselves out, they can get to yes, but they can also recognize when it's toxic and hold boundaries and protect themselves, right? That inflection point becomes theirs as opposed to being triggered into a response.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Carol Gilligan talks about the differences that are inculcated in boys and girls at different ages, and how by the time a girl in our culture is 11, 12, 13, she has learned to say, I don't know, right? To the answer to any question, even about herself. Are you hungry? I don't know. And boys learn to say, I don't care, right? And what she looks for in sort of the relational psychology that she worked up over the course of her career studying young people, um, was that under that, there's another voice that's who they actually are and what they really want to say, right? And somewhere underneath there, the boy still cares and the girl does know. There was a young woman she interviewed who said, she asked, was she asking her a set of questions for like, a standard kind of study interview. It was very structured. And I can't remember the question, but the young girl said, well, do you want to know what I think, or do you want to know what I really think?
Ooh.
Right. And I think what you're getting at with these techniques of working with your brain, giving your nervous system a chance to re-regulate real quick before you dive in, or before you retreat, um, is giving yourself a chance to find what Carol Gilligan called the under voice, what you really think, what is real here for you, and moving with that.
I think not only does it change everything, I think in a lot of cases, it's not experienced as safe to hear that under voice. It's vulnerable, it's scary, it opens you up to rejection. And sometimes, if we have an ally, we can hack that voice by asking an ally to show up for us. That's safe because it's your inner best friend's voice, right? It's not your internal voice, it's your inner best friend's voice. You can trust that, you can believe that, you can say that. And so it's like having a safe way to protected way to access that under voice in a way that you can hear without having to run away from it and reject it because it's too scary, too vulnerable. Right. I think I get frustrated sometimes when people say to girls, like, just do it. You can do it. be confident, right? Because they're facing so much pushback. And so we have to find these ways to regulate nervous systems, right? Grounding with Mother Earth, and to access allies that have been proven to be easier ways to find that self-compassionate voice that actually
Mm.
makes you more likely to achieve your goals and is actually a kinder way to relate to yourself, right? What is the hack into that the inner critic can't access? And it's very
Mm.
hard to shift our inner critic, right? She's very stubborn. She's very, very stubborn.
She's good at her job. Yeah.
She's very good at her job. And evolutionarily, she thinks she's protected, right? She thinks she's
Mm-hmm.
helping out. And
Mm-hmm.
she's not as helpful as she thinks she is, right? So
Right.
having these like practical tools to shift are really helpful to girls, and they use them before tests, they use them before speeches, they use them before driver's ed, they use them before applying to college.
Mm.
And every
Mm.
time they do, they're wiring their brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so it starts to become unconscious rather than having to be a thing they ask. It starts to be a part of how they think. And
Yeah.
when women get to that, that's the question I would like to ask is what kind of world would we see if we had
Mm.
women who had inner best friends and knew their voices belonged in our democracy?
Yeah. Yeah. Your inner hype woman, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, not the one who's demanding that you just go do it because that's what the world needs, right? Constant grind. But your inner hype woman who's just like, you do in fact have this. You've got this. Just walk into it. Just walk into it, when you're ready. And when you're ready, I think we sometimes you have to be in the world and do your things, especially in politics, because situations are happening, people and history are coming at you. But also in terms of where you have spaces that you can make a decision to engage, make it when you are genuinely ready to go, and not because that young girl that everybody thinks is the natural leader, but maybe she doesn't really think that she is necessarily. Like, she needs to have a second. She needs to maybe take another month, to come to herself and be ready. I think the rush is dangerous. Sorry. I think the rush is dangerous.
I think the rush is dangerous. I think sometimes we think that if we give ourselves moments of rest or beauty or joy, that we are betraying people who are suffering or betraying our potential. There's a betrayal. Whereas instead, giving yourself a moment of pause, being in the garden, petting your dog, going for a walk, all of these things actually build up your brain to be able to lead and to thrive.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we interpret those moments as betraying suffering because there is so
Mm.
much suffering
Mm.
rather than what builds you up the protection to engage suffering safely so that you don't burn out while you are trying to work for a better world.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's never enough of us right now who are trying to fix the suffering, to actually get it done. So, yes, you do have to. All of that is food, right? Like, all of that is fuel, but it's especially good fuel if you don't think of it that way. If you actually take the pleasure, if you actually take the rest, and just let yourself be a human body, a human in a human body that needs comfort and joy and tenderness and all of the beautiful things, the gardening, right? Good long walk in the forest does a person wonders, right? Um, so that when you do need the energy, it's just there, right? Again, I think this grind culture that we live in, this sort of like capitalism, politics, it like all goes so fast. That it feels like resting is not just a betrayal, but dangerous. Like, you're gonna lose. But what it does is it keeps, especially women who have like 900,000 things that they're thinking about, showing up not quite ready, right? Showing up not quite resourced in order to meet the schedule, right? And I think where we can, we really have to step out of that time, out of that rush. It's really good that you are teaching these girls that. It's so easy. I've seen so many young people fall into it and just hustle, 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 and then by the time they're 23, they're just like, wait, I'm tired. What happened? And it's like, you didn't let yourself settle, you didn't let yourself settle into what you were preparing to do. What are you finding are there commonalities or are there particular needs across the communities of the girls that you're working with? Are you finding that there are sort of maybe denser, like they call cancer hotspots, like maybe there are denser trauma hotspots in some places than in others, that need different kinds of attention? Or do these techniques that you found work pretty much regardless?
So everyone's suffering is unique, and no one knows anyone else's suffering. And the brain processes suffering pretty much the same way, pretty much through the same fight, flight, freeze structure. So the skills that we teach in DemocraSHE are for suffering, are for difficulty. And that can be anything from imposter syndrome. I don't feel like I belong. I constantly feel out of place. I constantly feel like I have no right to be here, all the way to, I'm in a school system where women's voices are suppressed. We are not for processing trauma, right? Like the big tree traumas that need processing and licensed mental health professionals, right? Obviously, that's not us. But I think it fits all the different things that young women run into that throws them off their game and makes them flood into a flight, fight, freeze response. And I think when you learn to take control back over your body by learning something like grounding, which pulls you out of that fight, fight, freeze part of your brain back into the prefrontal cortex, back into your body, that's for any situation that pulls you out of your body. It's a universal, soothing, grounding, evidence-based response. Inner best friend works. I had one young woman in Texas who was going to give a presentation on feminism, who was told by her professor that he hated feminism, but she was welcome to try.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And,
oh my God.
And so she grounded in her body. She asked her best friend what she would say, and she said, "You're passionate about this. You want to give this." She connected with the DemocraSHE community, her sisters, who, like you said in the beginning, a community that has her back. And she went with feminism is women wanting equal social, legal, and economic rights. And she got 100% on her presentation. And I think going into a presentation being told I'm going to hate this subject can so fluster you that you tumble over your words, that you forget what you were going to say. It throws you. But if you have a way to settle back into your body, hear that encouraging voice, get advice from a community that has your back, then you too could get 100% on your presentation on feminism in Ruby Red part of Texas.
To that hostile professor.
To that hostile professor.
Yeah.
And, and have a positive experience out of that makes you very proud of yourself.
Yeah. The community is a huge part of that then, right? Like how did these young girls and women stay in touch with each other for a long, long time? Are they like a constant support as they're moving into the world? Is that how this ends up being like a real community, not a fake one?
We talk very unironically about being a sisterhood for life. And we have a lot of opportunities for alumni to come back together and engage and learn. We're 70% first generation American. So we do a lot around college and how you prepare for that, how you apply for that. We also just have a community platform where girls can directly correspond. And so girls will drop all the time. Like, I'm going into a group interview, any advice? And then all of her sisters will jump in and be like, in my group interview, this is what I did. And I found this really helpful. Or she's like, I'm applying to this college. Anyone have any information? And so they're constantly coming in and giving advice and support and being like, you've got this. And we're truly a community where women lift women, where you get to celebrate your sister just as you deserve to be celebrated yourself. And her victory is your victory, just like your victory.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how much power women will generate for and between each other. The minute you lift that, like, kind of fake competitive, like, overlay, right? That sort of capitalism, patriarchy lays on top of us. None of you are good enough. All of you are competing for attention and care and a right to be here, and as soon as you lift that off just a little bit, the women are like, how can I help you? What do you need? How do we make this just enormous for each other, instead of the competitive, even tearing each other down kind of action that women who haven't had that, I guess, awakening can engage in, right? And these days, God, I am so scared for our civil rights in this country right now. They are being so quickly chewed up, that having a new generation of young women who are aware of that, ready to face it, ready to take it into every area of work that they want to go into, that's going to be an incredible effect in the future. It's going to be something we're all going to desperately need,
That is the dream. That is definitely the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. After this last week, it's getting a little spooky. It's getting a little spooky around here. You mentioned that 70% of these young women are first generation Americans, right? That is a lot to be carrying just as a kid these days, much less a kid who wants to think about, like, direct political engagement, right? In general, how are they? I guess, out of care, I would like to know how these young folks are doing in the face of this moment.
I can only speak to how they're doing in the DemocraSHE community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in the DemocraSHE community, we believe every person deserves to be seen, heard, and valued. And we talk very unironically about radical love, radical joy, radical hope, and being sisters, being part of a sisterhood. And so I think when these young people are in DemocraSHE, they can be vulnerable about how they are feeling, and they get support from their sisters who are listening and who care. And I think they also are learning some practical brain tools, right, to deal with negative thoughts, to deal with anxiety. There is nothing there. It is so heartbreaking. I think right now it is important to have these safe, contained, loving spaces where young people can talk vulnerably about what they're going through and receive support. And I think it's also tied up in, not only is it tied up in receiving support, it's tied up in your identity is your superpower. It is what makes you great. And there is no one else in the world who has your lived experience. Imagine an America where all the different lived experiences were reflected in our laws. And we talk a lot in DemocraSHE about you have to first think it before you can realize it. So we realize we sound naive when we say we see legislators that reflect America. We see legislation that reflects the needs of everyone in America as superpowers. But we hold that because we think it will come true. And I tell the girls, there is an America that has never yet been, but absolutely can be. And I see it coming into being as they step into their rightful roles right alongside their sisters.
Yes. You sound yeah, this sounds like Medusa Rising. I talk a great deal to a slightly older audience, but I talk a great deal about how our differences are actually all of our strengths. They don't have to be sites of contestation or competition. They're actually sites of wisdom. And where they overlap, there's real power there, where we can bring all of those perspectives and experiences, selves to an issue, right? That's where some real depth and some real power is, as opposed to flipping that or trying to, um, negate parts of our being so that everything is smooth. You go ahead and put it in there and let it bubble for a little while, right? Let a good answer percolate, and support each other across it. Consider that indeed a strength, right? A superpower. There's a lot, unfortunately, I think, of women in some of the older generations who've forgotten just how powerful that is, and just how, in fact, joyful it is to engage with each other with that kind of openness. And it's not even just care, it's just really profound respect, right? Care you can get into, but really profound respect is a joyful thing to experience. I'm delighted to hear that these girls are creating that for themselves, and that they're doing that through DemocraSHE in the way that they are. Yeah, it sounds naive. It really does. I sound like a crazy pie in the sky utopian a lot in this work, but like, I'm not. We've seen this. These kinds of communities, this kind of change, these ways of living with each other as human beings have happened before. They can happen again, and they can happen at
I
scale.
think there are many things that sound utopian or naive until they come true.
Yes.
Until they come true.
Everything is impossible until it isn't.
Until it isn't anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. It's a good thing to remember. And I think too, it sounds like in your work and with these girls and young women, because you start from a place of, look, everybody suffers. Everybody's afraid of this. Everybody has a hard time with that. Everybody's running into these. Like, you just face that right up front. So it's not a fault. It's not a flaw to say, I am encountering this particular fear or this particular anxiety or this particular social or work problem or whatever, right? Because you started with, we're all vulnerable people in a hard system that makes things harder than they need to be. So let's take care of each other in that. You're just leaps and yards ahead of almost everybody on the planet because you've created that attitude from the beginning, which is amazing. What do you think? Oh, that's not the right way to phrase that question. Let me try again. Let me change completely that question. Sorry, I know this is a debate going on in my head. When you talk about like developing the inner best friend, right? Your inner hype woman, would you describe a little bit of that process for us? Is that
absolutely
a fair thing? Okay.
So what we ask the girls, and I would ask your listeners, is to think of a person or an animal, or it can be a fictional character, that makes you feel seen. Like I was saying, seen, heard, and valued and loved.
Mm-hmm.
And for many girls, it's Taylor Swift. For me, it's Barack Obama and my puppy dog Branch. And it can be absolutely anyone. The research shows that it can be as someone real in your life, but someone not real works just as well. But a voice that you trust. And I would say, who might that, and I'm going to ask you this question, who might that figure be for you?
Oh, man. My mind goes to my grandma, my dad's mom, but also my best friend from high school. Yeah. They both had a way of just believing Esme was doing whatever Esme needed to be doing, and everybody else could just shut up about it. Thank you. Like, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love that. And I might ask yourself in
Mm.
moments of doubt or moments of insecurity, which we all have because we're
Mm.
human beings. But what would my grandma say to me right now? What would my best friend from high school say to
Mm.
me right now in this
Mhm.
moment?
Mm.
And usually the
Yeah.
voice that comes up is much more encouraging,
Yeah.
much more loving, has your
Yeah.
back. That if you just try to say, think positive, be positive
Oh my
about
gosh.
this, right? So like it's giving yourself a way in, a very concrete way in. What would my grandma say? What would my
Mhm.
grandma say?
Mhm.
And then the other thing that I talk about is an inner champion. So the inner best friend has your back and is your cheerleader. An inner champion is, when do I need to be brave? When do I need to stand up, hold a boundary, do something difficult like that? And an inner champion, my inner champions are like Stacey Abrams, Megan Rapinoe, Shonda Rhimes is an inner champion. Um, and so that person, that voice is when I need to be brave. And so that I might ask you what your inner champion could be, who or an inner champion could be.
Oh my gosh. I uh it's gonna be my husband. Yeah, no, I got super lucky. But he is one of those people who does the right thing. He has a very Obama feel about him that way, in terms of public figures. He just does the right thing, even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous for him in some professional or personal way, he will stick to what's right. And we have both been in spots in the course of our marriage where we were up against some people who were doing the very wrong thing to us, for the very wrong reasons. And it would have been safer to walk away. It would have been safer to play small. Um, it would have been easier, in the ways that it usually is. The ways that we see a lot of people with a lot of power playing along and being small, you know, even when they don't have to. Um, and even in one spot, I'm not going to go into the details, but even in one spot, me doing the right thing with what I was doing was going to make his work life more complicated. And he told me to just stay on the gas. He was like, "You're right. You're doing the right thing for this community. You just stay on the gas. We're going to be fine." He didn't hesitate about that. Um, yeah, yeah. He
So
just doesn't
first of
give up on it.
all, I love this for you. First of all, I love
It
this
just
for
worked out
you.
that way. It could have been somebody else, but
And
yeah.
second of all, this is a very concrete thing to say when he's not physically next to you. Is, what
Mm,
would my husband say in this situation? And I think you've
yeah.
got grandma, you've got best friend from high school, you've got husband.
Yeah.
And what it is a way to access that voice. It
Mm-hmm.
lives inside you, but it's a way to access it, right? Because it's like a hack into him. So I think
Right.
learning about its tools, that's kind of you meet your inner best friend, you meet your inner champion, and then you ask in tough moments what they would say to you. That's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
inner best friend skill.
Mm, yeah. I feel it working right now. Actually, you don't know. It reminds you how well resourced you actually are, right? Like in yourself and in your life, or in a culture, that there are people who resonate in you, right? Um, in a way that's going to make you yourself.
And I think just
Mm,
for people who might feel sad that they don't have in their lives a
mm,
grandma, a best friend, a
mm,
husband, who are these voices, not everybody does.
Right.
And
Right.
people like Barack Obama, people like
Mhm.
Taylor Swift, these people that you kind of feel like you know and you have a sense of their
Yeah.
voice are just as effective
Yeah.
as a real life.
Yeah.
So,
I can
and
see
I will
Michelle Obama
also,
being that for a lot of people too. She's just
Michelle
so,
Obama is a big
especially since
one.
she's not first lady anymore, right? She's just so real about it. Just right there
She's
up
amazing. I
front.
would, yeah. Puppy dogs and kitty cats are also
Mm-hmm.
exceptional inner best friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. My dog and I have a death pact. Like we will both go down for the other one.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. um yeah, I did get lucky with some people. I got very unlucky with some other people. So it's good that a few of them showed up. But yeah, if your inner champion is Michelle Obama, you win. You win all
You
the
win.
things.
You win.
You win all the things forever. Um do most of these girls wind up going in political directions, or do they kind of spread out across the many disciplines and areas and take this power with them and bring their
So
sisters?
the answer is both. I would say about 60% go into law and public policy in some capacity. Um, but I would say they go into the arts, they go into STEM, they go into social work, they go into all the different places. I think women need to be in every room where decisions are being made. And these are also incredible places to incubate future candidates because we want candidates to come from all walks of life. So I think, it's interesting. For example, one girl came into DemocraSHE and ended up getting like a PhD in data statistics in public health. So like she took her STEM brain and matched it with the public policy, interest of DemocraSHE and came out as a STEM person who does public policy, who
Mm-hmm.
creates the public health that is part of how we run our government. So I think, it's interesting to see how it'll tweak. Sometimes
Yeah.
they go directly into public policy, but sometimes it slightly shifts the trajectory into what
Mm-hmm.
they're interested in and how they want to incorporate civic engagement in their work. Like the
Mm-hmm.
arts, for example, having so many people who are interested in the arts and interested in representation in arts and interested in women's voices in arts and women of color's voices in arts. And, I think making sure that they have their inner best friends when they're walking in to pitch their TV show is just as important to me as the inner best friends that are sending our girls to get a master's in diplomacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you need the stories. We need the bigger cultural context where everybody shows up and can be seen in their complexity as opposed to in the kind of flattening that we've had for so long. That's part of why we're kind of stuck in the moment that we're stuck in now. Um and the curiosity that opens up, right? Like the curiosity that opens up in other people to start making connections across some of those differences can be really magic, coming from television or poetry or from fiction or yeah. Cuz it stories and art have a fun way of getting around your argument brain, you know, into your more sort of emotional but not illogical, just your more connected person brain, right? Your self. And then you can think about it, but it just kind of skips past all of the yes but parts of your brain and
Oh,
makes them wait their turn.
100%.
Yeah.
I think Will and the show Will and Grace had more to do with getting gay marriage passed in America than any argument or any speech anyone made from a podium.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally believe that. That makes perfect sense, right? Here were all of these fantastically complicated people living together in their tight little friendship, and we really got to know whole humans through that show, with their yeah, I think of Will too, like with his own like restrictions, right? Like it's okay. It's okay to be a little uptight. It's fine. Some of your friends will make up for that. That's cool. That's totally good. Um what is this is what is the what do you think is the most compelling vision that's coming out of some of these conversations these girls are having right now that feels the most fiery?
Do you mean in terms of outcomes or in terms of things they're talking about?
I think like in terms of things they could, outcomes, things that they might be able to really accomplish in the next, few years.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because we are engaging very early.
Hmm.
And we've been around for 5 years now. So we're starting to have some of our first outcomes. So we've had several girls actually run for office,
Nice.
including two who won and became the youngest elected officials in Maryland. And then you just see a lot of girls turning around and putting new ideas into place with their DemocraSHE sisters. So Grayson, who launched the first youth reproductive rights conference in Chicago, and her second year, she had 55 girls write her that the conference had inspired them to start something in their own schools. And the conference was something she came up with in DemocraSHE because in our 10-week program, we asked the girls to write up their launch pad, which is how they're going to take their DemocraSHE skills and keep moving forward as a leader. And that's where she envisioned the conference and got advice from her DemocraSHE sisters and checked in with their inner best friend and, saw it grow and saw these incredible responses. Or, you have like Lourdes and Gayoun who met in DemocraSHE and founded a youth civic engagement nonprofit called Youth Policy Makers of Tomorrow, which has already gotten funded by Carnegie. And I
Carnegie,
can't,
nice.
and I'm Carnegie, and I'm thrilled to shout them out. Or, people like Amanda, who took her DemocraSHE training and got very interested in, she's from Colombia and Venezuela. And she wanted to carry forward the voices of the people that were disappeared and tell their stories. And so she wanted to apply to the Obama Foundation, but imposter syndrome just swamped her because she's like, this is so prestigious. I'll never get it in a million years. And so she 100% reached for her inner best friend who said, you have just as good a chance as anyone else. I'm going to ask you to finish this and turn this in. And she got it. And she's an Obama fellow. So I think it's hundreds of stories like that of women who are using these tools to step out of comfort zones and try something new. I mean, Esme, it's like there's one girl who might be my favorite who wrote in her post, because we do pre-post tests to see the shifts. And we asked the question to our graduates, did DemocraSHE help you do something you would have been too scared to do before our program? And 96% said yes. She said, LOL, this is low key so simple, but I stood up for myself at Starbucks. And I was like, you have my attention. And she said, they asked me for a pump of vanilla, and I said yes, because I didn't know it cost an extra 60 cents. And for some of our girls, that's, a lot of money. And she's like, so when I got the drink, normally before DemocraSHE, I would have just taken it and said nothing. But I grounded with Mother Earth. I reached for my inner best friend. And I said, this wasn't clear. I actually don't want this drink. I don't want to pay that extra 60 cents. And she's like, in all caps, I stood up for myself.
Wow.
That girl will stand up for herself in relationships, when she's going for a promotion, right? It's the skill to feel like you are silenced by some powerful institution and feeling like you have the tools to ground in your body and reach for that encouraging voice and speak up. That is the kind of, I'm as excited about that outcome as the, fancy running for office and founding civic engagement nonprofits, because that is the dream. And that's what we see over and over. 96% of our graduates say, I feel equipped to do things now that I was too scared to do before.
Yeah. Ha! Watch out, world.
Right. Yeah. So there are a couple ways to do democracy. There's a 10-week program of 2 hours a week. There's a 1 day summer intensive, and then there's a self-directed program on our website. These are all online because we are a national program. So we're putting girls from different states together. And right now we have 42 states that are talking to each other. And we also pay a stipend for the 10-week program and the 1 day program because unpaid internships are one of the major ways into politics in our country, and only girls who can afford to do that will ever get to do that. So we're trying to turn that around and think of lifting barriers to entry by paying our participants. In the 10-week program, what we ask our girls to do at the end is something called a launch pad. And it is actually based off of Stacey Abrams, who sat down at Spelman and made a list of where her life was going to go. And she said, even though she didn't do it exactly, just the act of making herself think about where she wanted to go was so exciting, right? And kept her on track. So our girls write down the next steps, the next 2 steps they're going to take as leaders using their democracy skills, the resiliency skills they're going to use to help get there, and then the world they're fighting for. To complete the sentence, I'm fighting for a world where. And that in our graduation on the final workshop, the girls present their plans to each other and to a few people who are, invited in from our newsletter. And it's a really exciting way to hear all the visions girls have for the future and how they want to get involved in the next steps that they can actually tangibly take. And I owe it all to Stacey Abrams, who reading her book, I was inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. It does. It gives you a North Star, right? You might wander a little bit, but it gives you a North Star to have a plan like that.
And then they
Um,
actually implement them. And you get
yeah.
amazing things like nonprofits and reproductive rights conferences and campaigns and.
Yeah. Yeah. They find the thing they need. Turns out all these other girls need it too. So let's go. Um, Terrific. Oh my goodness. What are the what happens when these girls encounter some friction out there? We are talking about young women who traditionally are not that welcome in some spaces, are not envisioned as future candidates, leaders of arts organizations, etc. Right? Um, how do they go about supporting each other through that? And what's their um, not just their inner best friend, but like how do they frame that friction for themselves, like critically, so that they can outsmart it?
Yeah. So overcoming the friction, the barriers on the path were precisely why democracy was founded. Because I was seeing amazing women who were getting knocked off the path to political candidacy and then also tortured when they were in political candidacy. So I think, there's a lot of, I know you said other than in their best friend, but the reason why we go back to the body and back to the brain is because we do things like social justice grounding, where we're imagining something very important to you being criticized, harassed, and as you notice your body start to go into fight, flight, freeze, how can you ground in your own body with Mother Earth, who's right beneath your feet? She never leaves you. You'll never have to ask. She is always there, so that you're coming safely into your body and not living in that evolutionary ancient part of like threat part of your brain. Because that doesn't make the decisions for us that we want to make. We want to make decisions from our prefrontal cortex. And so I think the skills are designed to gently shift the brain to protect your inner life, because we will work our whole lives to change racism and homophobia and transphobia and all of it, right? But while that marathon work of many generations is going on, we want to protect the inner lives of these girls. So the tools are very tangible ways to protect your life. And what we say to the girls is we paraphrase the Viktor Frankl quote: in between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is choice. And that choice is freedom. And what we say to the girls is the skills that we teach you are to make that space between an incoming stimulus, which is probably not friendly, and your authentic response. Because when you have that space, that is choice. And that choice is freedom. And what would our country look like if women had access to choice and freedom?
I mean, I know the answer to that, which would be completely different to what it is right now. But the enacting that vision is one of the things I'm encouraging women to do through Medusa Rising also. So I am hopeful that we're going to make a lot more progress on that front. But that gap that Frankel is talking about, that you're working with, is that space where I think our dignity sits. And when we can get back into it before we move, when this happens, what follows will then be clear. What follows will then have that aura of dignity on it, because that's where it's coming from. And it won't be a jangly, right? It'll be a smooth response. It'll be a smooth action it takes. Might be to disengage and go somewhere else, but it'll be aligned and grounded, as you say, right, with Mother Earth. We are very big into the matriarchies here at Medusa Rising, so she is a very real, a very real thing. And then it's undeniable. It's when you go to figures like Stacey Abrams or Barack Obama, right, or Michelle Obama. There's something compelling about them because they are moving in an undeniable way. So it feels good to be attached to them, right? And that feeling good to be attached to someone brings people, right? That gap gives you the energy to bring people. And then the friction eventually wears away, because the people are like the water moving through it, eventually. Yeah, that's going to make all the difference in the next few years.
That is my hope and my dream. And I really thank you, Esme, for having me here today for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. You are bringing a great deal of hope and very necessary energy into the world. And so we are grateful for that.
May I tell your listeners where to find more information?
Absolutely. I want to put all of the cool things in the show notes, but please talk to them about where to get you.
Yes, the organization is DemocraSHE.org. And you can find me on LinkedIn and Substack.
Oh, cool. I very much want to follow your Substack. That would be terrific. Thank you. Thanks. I hope the rest of your day out there goes really well. And I hope you keep enjoying in the work that you're doing. Yeah, it shows on your face. Esme. Yeah, you're very welcome. We'll see you around, Sarah. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, brave ones, for the gift of your attention. We hope this episode has been edifying and useful and leads you in some new and nourishing directions. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch, whip on by medusarising.org. All of our things are there. And here's to your greatest, deepest, shiniest, brightest, most sparkly, most dangerous, most intimidating feminist courage. Stay rad, stay witchy, be good to each other.